It's January in the garden, and it's the perfect time of year to start planning and prepping for your spring garden, since we don't have as much growing on that we normally do in the spring and in the summer. I thought I would take you through some of the things that I'm currently growing, some of the stuff that's on my to-do list to knock out during January, as well as some of the seeds that I'll be starting, and maybe you can use this episode as a way to help plan and prepare for your own garden. So without further ado, let's dig in. A big task that's always on my to-do list in the winter months is to take care of my perennial plants. This means pruning and mulching them. For example, this asparagus behind me is starting to go dormant. You can tell that most of the color is gone. So it's time for me to chop it off about an inch above the soil and then mulch it heavily. Also in this bed, I have some of my strawberries. And as you know, strawberries are perennial as well. So this entire bed really just needs a lot of attention. And if you're wondering why those little bags are just randomly in the strawberry patch, well, that's because I like to protect my strawberries from things like slugs and birds. And these little organza bags are perfect for protecting against those pests. And I just haven't had time to remove them. So there you go. And yes, strawberries and asparagus do grow well together. They actually make really nice companion plants. Strawberries create this natural ground cover and they have a pretty shallow root system, whereas asparagus have a pretty deep root system and they are tall, kind of like trees. So if you live in a hot summer climate like I do, where it's regularly over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it helps to shade out your strawberries and maximize your growing space. Other perennials you want to be pruning this time of year include your berry bushes. These are some of my blackberries right here. Now there are two kinds of berry bushes in terms of how they bear fruit. You have your primocane and your floricane berry bushes, and it's really important to know the difference so that you know how to prune them. Primocane berries will fruit on the first year's growth, and floricane berries will fruit on the second year's growth. So if you have floricane berry bushes and you would like berries the following year, then don't prune off this current year's canes because that's what's going to give you fruit the next year. But if you're in your third year and you really need to cut back the plant, then you can do a little bit of pruning at that time. For example, this boysenberry bush that I have here that's I guess not even really a bush because it's sprawling all over the flower bed, but it's floricane, so I don't want to prune any of that growth off because I didn't get any berries this year and I want to make sure that I get a bunch next year. Other perennial plants that are really great to prune this time of year are things like your fruit trees, any other berry bushes that you have, grapevines, and even some of your flowers like your rose bushes. This would be a good time to prune those because they're dormant. When you prune things when they're dormant, it's just less stress on the plant. And speaking of less stress on dormant plants, the winter months is a really great time to start ordering any of those other perennial plants that you want to be planting in very early spring. So it's a great time to add fruit trees and berry bushes specifically, even things like strawberries and asparagus, because the idea is you want to get those in the ground and have them break dormancy in the ground. And by planting them in the early spring, you are giving them a good start at life and letting them establish their root system so that by the time summer rolls around, they are more prepared to handle periods of heat or drought stress. So order those plants, and if anyone asks you why, you can say, because Megan told you so. If you haven't already added mulch to your garden beds, now is the time to do it, especially for the plants that you have that are still growing or are dormant. Mulch is essentially the warm, fuzzy blanket that your plant roots need to help get through the nights that are a bit chillier than they really want it to be. Also, if you're going to get a good freeze, I highly recommend thoroughly watering your soil before that freeze happens. It may seem counterintuitive because you're thinking, but Megan, like, water turns into ice when it's cold, and I hear you. But water and wet soil does a really good job of maintaining heat, whereas dry soil just can't hold on to any heat. So you're actually helping to insulate your plant roots by watering them in well before a freeze. Now, this does not mean go and water all of the leaves of your plant. Just like as any time of year, you want to avoid watering your plant leaves because it can lead to things like disease. And I'm not talking about rain, that's normal. I'm talking about your regular watering schedule. And while we're at the back of the garden right here, check out our garlic. This is the garlic we planted together, y'all, in our garlic planting video. And if you're interested in planting garlic, I will put a card at the top of the screen. We planted 20 cloves of the Nootka Rose. It's a new variety I'm trying out this year. That's how it's doing. And then right here are the 130 cloves, I think it was, of the Enchelium Red. And this is the garlic that I actually grew in the garden last year and am reusing it. Now, something else that's important for us to be doing during these winter months is to be clearing out the beds of old vegetable growth. And this eyesore behind me is what used to be one of my tomato and cucumber beds. I also had a bunch of flowers in between the tomatoes. I really love companion planting, so I had alyssum, borage, marigolds, zinnias, and some other things that I can't remember the name of right now. So this is a little bit terrifying looking, but once you get out the big clippers, you can cut it all off pretty quickly. That is actually borage that self-seeded and is coming up again. Now, the other thing that goes hand in hand with clearing out old vegetable growth is also pulling all of the weeds. This is a pretty daunting task, and I definitely let some of these beds get away from me, which I'm not proud of, but it happens because, you know, life gets busy. I find that the winter months are a really great time to pull weeds because most of them have either died or they've gone dormant, so it's a lot easier to pull all those roots out. Now, the other thing that's kind of encouraging about pulling weeds during the winter time is that because they're dormant or they're dead, you're not going to walk out tomorrow and see like 30 more weeds, which is what it feels like in the peak of springtime. Now, we do have some fun winter crops growing that I want to show you guys. I'm pretty excited about them, so let's go take a look. This bed is the definition of a bit crowded. So here's a lot of my lettuce, which if you can see how adorable. I have a couple lettuce friends that self-seeded, so I should have some new baby lettuce coming in soon. And I've got tons of lettuce that's being completely overcrowded. And interestingly enough, even though it's the middle of winter, you can see that some of my lettuce and some of the arugula is actually bolting, which is okay, guys, because lettuce and arugula self-seed really, really well. So I actually had lettuce and arugula popping up in other garden beds, which is perfectly fine to me because more food that I didn't have to spend time sowing. And then over here, we have got these behemoths of mustard greens. I've got green mustard greens and red mustard greens. Truly insane. And then some of the radishes we planted here are also bolting, / they've just gotten way too big, if you guys can see that. Look how big that radish is. I'm not really gonna eat it, but it's still great for soil aeration, and it's always good to have healthy roots in your soil, so I'm just gonna leave it, but I kind of ran out of recipes to make radishes with. Same thing with the mustard greens. If you guys know of anything to make mustard greens with, hit a girl up, because there's only so many quiches I can eat in my life. These are my beans, my bush beans that died in the freeze, so just ignore those. And then here we've got lots of peas. So I've got sugar snap peas, and I also have shelling peas. You can see they've grown to the top of the netting here. Peas are just such an amazing, amazing snack to come out and eat in the garden. They're so fresh and so delicious. And they're also really winter hardy and freeze tolerant, as most of the stuff in the bed is that you see here. And in some of my other beds, I've got some other greens like cilantro and Swiss chard growing, which actually I think you can see the Swiss chard, some of the Swiss chard back there in the back. It's so delicious. It makes a really great substitute for spinach or kale if you want something that's a little more mellow. Broccoli is also a really wonderful winter crop, so I have that growing right behind me back here. I've got a couple different kinds, one of which that I thought was so fun is this purple broccoli. You can see that I've already harvested the main head here, but you can see all of the little side shoots that are coming up, which is super fun. And then I've got this big guy here, another one here, and then again, this variety up there, I'll have to look at what the variety is also bolting, which is just crazy because it is the middle of winter. However, we've had some pretty random fluctuating days when it comes to the hot weather. Like today, it's I think a high of 55 degrees, but yesterday it was 77 degrees. So you know what? I can't blame you, broccoli. I am so sorry that the weather has done this to you, babe. Now, a little pro tip or hack or whatever you want to call it for broccoli and your other brassica plants is to cover them up. I only have the covers up right now because I'm filming, but this cover will stop any of those bugs from getting in here that are going to harm your broccoli plants. So I'm specifically talking about the cabbage worm when I'm talking about our brassicas. But look at how beautiful our leaves are, y'all. And then the broccoli heads that I've harvested already have had literally no bugs in them. Way easier to clean and prep for food and not having to worry about any pests and not having to come out here and treat for them. So you save time, money, and heartache because you're not losing any plants that way. Some spinach and sorrel hanging out over here. I've got a little patch of parsnips right there. I've never had a parsnip before, so I'm excited for those to grow in. They do take a really long time. And then some pak choi representing. Now, if you guys remember, we sowed our carrots together at the very beginning of September. It was like the first week of September. And we put in a bunch of carrots in our little carrot patch right here. So I want to give you guys an update and show you how they're doing. And I just saw something absolutely crazy. This has never happened to me before while growing carrots. And I ran inside and I grabbed a quarter because I want to show you like what this carrot looks like to scale. Okay, just look at this. It looks like a totally normal, unassuming carrot patch, but y'all, what is that? Do you guys see how big that carrot is? Is that like, I don't even know if it's multiple. There's no way. It might be multiple carrots. Hang on. Look. I know you're looking because like it's on the screen, but I never ever have I grown a carrot that large. It's interesting because it's also right next to the drip line, but I have hardly watered these at all because, you know, carrots are a root crop, so you want the roots to go searching for water down in the soil. What do you think? Should we harvest this? I'm kind of nervous. Wow. I believe this is the Shin Carota variety of carrot. They are known for being super, like, thick. And I've already harvested several this year, and they were beautiful. Like, just absolutely gorgeous carrots. Okay, here we go. I can't even... I'm afraid I'm gonna break it. New plan of action. Hang on one second. I'm gonna set you down and I'm gonna carve a little bit around it. Okay, I've carved like the outline of the carrot. Okay, are you ready? I'm gonna give you guys like a little bit of carrot ASMR here. So I'm gonna try to be as quiet as I possibly can while I pull this out of the ground so you can hear it. That is like a person. Guys, look. Oh, that was dumb. Hang on. If anybody has any tips on how to hold a camera while also harvesting vegetables. Okay. Anyway. This is like an entire meal in one carrot. I think what actually happened here is that two of them sort of grew together because take a look here. You can kind of see right there how it looks like maybe two sort of grew together, and then you can see the bottom here. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. So the most massive carrot or carrot bundle I've ever pulled out of the ground. So pretty darn cool. And let's check on some of our other carrots that are normal sized for normal people. Oh, look how cute. Okay, so we've got a couple. Like we've got one right here. That looks pretty good. Also pretty large. That is pretty, that's impressive. And then this one here, look at him. Looks great too. So we're gonna pull this guy before he starts getting way too big. Oh my God, he's huge too. Oh, okay, ready? Here we go. Oh. This could be a game. You guys could compete against another gardener that you know and see who can grow the biggest carrots. So here they are, for comparison's sake. Yay. And a little fun fact for you guys, carrots actually get sweeter after a couple frosts. This is because the plant will send sugars down into the root to actually protect it. It's kind of like its own built-in frost protection. Sugar has a lower freezing point than water, so that's why you get a sweeter carrot. Now, it may seem a little wild to be talking about seed starting right now, but some crops really need to be started early, especially those that are sensitive to heat. So let's go through all the seeds that I'm starting for January. So for the first week in January, I'm going to be starting my celery as well as all of my onions and leeks. Which, by the way, I will be doing a 3-part video series on growing onions, and the first video is going to be on starting them from seed. So if you're not subscribed and onions are on your grow list this year, I highly suggest you click that button. And I'm also going to be starting the cold stratification process for my echinacea, also known as purple coneflower. It's a great medicinal plant. So in order to cold stratify them, I'm actually just going to put some of the seeds in the fridge for a month, but I won't actually be sowing the seeds until the first week of February. Now, if you're not familiar with cold stratification, it just means that some seeds germinate much better when exposed to cooler weather. It helps break down the seed and get them to germinate better. And it also mimics what happens in nature. So for example, many flowers will drop their seeds in the fall and then they overwinter and then they sprout in the spring. So we're just trying to mimic some of that by putting the seeds in the fridge for a month. Now, in the second week of January, I'm going to be starting my parsley because that is a cool weather herb. And then in the third week of January, I am starting my artichokes. Yes, those are perennial. It's actually my first year I'm going to be growing artichokes, so I'm excited to show you what those look like. But first, I have to start them from seed. Now, keeping with our more cold hardy plants theme, in the fourth week of January, I'm going to be starting my Brussels sprouts, my Swiss chard, and my kale. And everything I've just listed out to you guys, I will be starting inside. If you're curious about the exact varieties that I'm going to be starting, I can put those links in the description for you so you can click on them, read more about them, and maybe even grow right along with me if you want to grow the same varieties. Okay, so there you go, a little bit of a tour of what's going on in the garden this month and things I plan on accomplishing. If you like this kind of series where I pop on every month and tell you what's going on, hopefully it helps keep you on track in your own garden, please let me know because I want to make sure I'm making valuable content that you guys enjoy and that's helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you dig this video, don't forget to hit that like button and I'll see you in the next one. Honestly, the carrot was like massive. Brussels sprout.